want to start off this video with a little tip. All too often, my guys included, I see people put the gas and oil down on hardscaping, and quite often the oil and the gas gets sloshed around and you get a little bit of buildup on the bottom. So it's so much better to set it down on an area where you're not going to be staining a hardscape surface. There's an interesting shot. Somebody sent that in. What is that? This is my job. Today's job was a removal, and you look at that tree and you'll say, why are we removing this tree? Well, I want you to look at it closely, and maybe some of you can guess what kind of tree this is. It is a silver maple. So the job wasn't very hard, especially with a bucket truck. It went pretty fast. We had the whole thing done by noon. But I really wanted to show you some of the reasons, the justification for why this tree was so useless, maybe? I don't know. The value of this tree in terms of longevity was not there. And the family that lived in this house, they were a young couple. So they asked me first, should we trim this tree? And I said, well, you know it's in pretty rough shape. And they said, yeah, we know, but can we get a few more years out of it? And I said, well, I suppose you could, but if you're going to live here for a long time, wouldn't it be better to plant a new tree and have a tree that's going to evolve rather than dissolve? Because this old silver maple was not much longer for this earth. All the branches were rotten, branches were dying, branches were breaking off, and as you can see clearly through all these shots here, the tree was full of decay, and it's all a direct result from having been topped so many times. And some species will tolerate topping better than others. It's not a good thing for any tree, but in this case, this is a particular species that is highly susceptible to decay. So they finally agreed that they wanted to get this thing out of here. Look at that. Everywhere you look, there's just, just long areas of rot and decay and dieback. I'm sure the thing leafed out, and I'm sure it was okay, but I think they made an intelligent decision. I did advise them to get rid of it. I said, you're going to be babying this tree along, and eventually you're going to have to cut it down because the whole thing is going to decline. So we got the tree down on the ground. Look at that one. There's still a little tiny bit of life in every one of these branches, but not very much. Now, I suppose we could have cut this tree back really hard again, and it would have suckered out, and it would have been like starting over again. We got it down to some more sound wood, but even these larger limbs, this limb right here is, it was cracked all the way through, drying out. All throughout the tree was a mess. So I believe it should have gone, and we did. We took it all the way down. Like I say, it wasn't a hard job. Here we are getting down to the soundwood, and I was kind of curious to see what it would look like directly below these big hollows. And amazingly, the wood was pretty solid. It was pretty sound. Had I thought that it would be more solid like this, I might have saved the log for something, but we didn't really have the time or the wherewithal to haul a log. So fortunately, a neighbor came over and said, I'll take the wood. So we had time to get on to another job. This one right here, this is an interesting job because there were some huge trees on this property. They're not really old trees, probably 50, maybe 60-year-old trees. And there was a grouping of 5 Deodar cedars that were planted in a row. And you can see they're missing one. Well, this is cool. If you look way up there, you'll see what looks like a nest, but it's not. This is what's known as a fasciation. Fasciation. And according to Webster's, the definition of a fasciation is a malformation of plant stems commonly manifested as enlargement and flattening as if several stems were fused. And that's what we had here. And I've never seen that in the Deodar cedar. So I went up there with the bucket, and it looked totally out of place, and the client asked us if we can get it out of there. So I did. I cut it out of there. Another common term for these is sometimes people call these a witch's broom. And there you go. It's on the ground. And I have no idea why they would call this a witch's broom. Except maybe if you use it like a broom. I don't know. Interesting how all those stems come from the same area, and it's an explosion. And I don't know what causes that. I've never heard of anybody give me a good explanation of that. It's kind of a rarity. I see it. Oh, there we go, the witch's broom. So we cut that out of the tree, and it did look out of place. It was quite heavy, and I'm sure that in the wind it would have rocked and reeled and probably broken. Now, I'm up in the bucket here, and I'm kind of looking at this tree that's got some big, long limbs. And if you look way up high, you can see where 3 large limbs snapped out. Now, there's a weakness where a branch broke, and all the remaining limb that's going down, that's looking down onto the house, that whole limb, in my opinion, is a potential breakage. There was some broken limbs already up in the tree, and there's another limb that kind of grows out and looks like it's cracking and growing down. So you've really got to analyze the tree and look for all the potential defects, especially if there's a house or some sort of a target underneath. And if you look up there closely, it's kind of hard to see, but there's 3 big broken stubs that happened fairly recently. Deodar cedar. Now I wanted to follow up a little bit on this tree, the deodar cedar. In our area, it's a very, very commonly planted tree, but it doesn't really belong here. You know, if you look up where the deodar cedar originates from, it comes from Afghanistan and the Himalayas and different types of climates that are entirely different than this Mediterranean gentle climate that we have here. So consequently, when you have a tree that's used to growing in a harsh environment, it'll grow slow and it'll grow entirely different. And you bring it into a fertile soil with lots of water and lots of sunshine and good weather, these trees can grow into abnormal trees. So many species, including the deodar cedar, the redwood, there's a lot of trees that really don't belong here. People plant them anyway. They grow really well, too well. But because they grow so fast, they oftentimes will self-destruct. The branches get longer than they would normally. They get heavier than they would normally. And in this case, when the tree gets topped or tipped back or things happen to it through its entire lifetime, the additional splitting of the limbs, the additional branching at the tips causes an excessive amount of additional weight. In this case, more cones than it should have. So you start a process of never-ending pruning. You get up there and lighten it all up, and a few years later, it's right back where it was before, or maybe even worse. So anyway, just wanted to talk a little bit about this particular tree, and I'm sure in your area you have got species of trees that don't really belong either. Hey, thanks a lot for watching, and please subscribe, hit that like button, and there's that little bell up there. If you hit that little bell, then you'll actually get notified when new videos come up.